Good morning, members and friends of New Sweden Lutheran Church. This is Sunday, March 22nd, fourth Sunday in Lent. Because of the coronavirus, our governmental officials have told us that we cannot meet as a congregation, so we are trying to bring you this message by our digital technology. That will happen today and probably for the next couple of weeks. The Gospel lesson for the fourth Sunday in Lent is found in the 9th chapter of St. John, beginning at the first verse. As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's works might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." Then he went and washed and came back, able to see. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but someone like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Then how were your eyes opened?" He answered, "This man called Jesus made mud, spread it on my eyes, and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' Then I went and washed and received my sight." They said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, then I washed, and now I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he not see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But we do not know how it is that he sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him, he is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. But the Jews had already agreed that anyone who confessed Jesus to be the Messiah would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, "He is of age. Ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is the astounding thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to the one who worships him and obeys his will. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing. They answered him, "You were born entirely in your sins, and are you trying to teach us?" And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me, so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking to you is he." He said, "Lord, I believe." And he worshipped him. Jesus said, "I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind." Some of the Pharisees near him heard this, and they said to him, "Surely we are not blind, are we?" And Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would not have sinned. But now that you say, 'We see,' your sin remains." Here ends the gospel for the day. It is almost always a challenge to try and relate the gospel text to the common events that are happening in our present day. Sometimes it is difficult to pick out the one event that you want to focus on that relates somehow to the text. But it seems that we have been blessed this week with only one news story: coronavirus, something that threatens the welfare of the entire world, and people are afraid. It is a tragic event, and we are called to deal with it. In our gospel text, we have the story of Jesus dealing with a man who has been born blind. This is very critical in his life, and is a critical story that we are dealing with. The man has a problem. It is something that has plagued him all his life, and he comes to Jesus with some kind of hope. Jesus gives him a ridiculous command: go down to the pool of Siloam and wash, and you'll see. It sounds like such a ridiculous command, such poor advice to give someone in that tragic spot. And yet he did what Jesus told him to do, and a miracle happened. We are looking for a miracle. That's what some of the political pundits are saying on the newscast. We look for a miracle. We want this to stop. There are all kinds of things that are happening in relation to what is going on right now, this past week, probably the week to come. And we can relate them to our gospel text this morning. First of all, it seems just like the people, the Pharisees in the gospel text, we here now are looking for some kind of explanation. What happened? Who's responsible for this? How bad is it going to get? And most of all, is it going to affect me? And not only are there physical consequences, but there are financial, there are social, there are psychological problems. Who's responsible for this? We seem to need an answer. The Pharisees, when they asked Jesus, who's responsible for this? Did he sin or his parents? We look at the news newscast and somebody is trying to bring blame to somebody, we say it's the Chinese, the fault of the Chinese. The Chinese say it's the fault of our military. There are some that are speculating that it might be the work of terrorists. But we seem to need an answer. It's so important to know who's responsible. And the reality is we don't really know who's responsible. We have been told by some of those pundits from the past that it would be just a matter of time until we had a major medical crisis with some bug that was very difficult to control, where people hadn't developed enough resistance so that so many would suffer. Maybe like the Black Plague of the Middle Ages. We live in a world that is not perfect. We live in a world that we have sinned, says the Bible. And so bad things are going to happen. There's no necessity of blaming somebody. It's due. There are some people even that I've heard talking in the church. Is this some kind of punishment from God? Who is it that sinned? Who is responsible for bringing God's wrath upon us? Nancy Eisman, professor of sociology and religion at Emory University, was born with a handicap. She said, I was never quite satisfied with the answers the church gave as to why I was handicapped, why I was crippled. Certainly some will say it was my responsibility. My parents went to all kinds of faith healers, and I was never cured. And people would say, well, God must have a special purpose for you, or you wouldn't be suffering from this. There's a plan. It'll all be all right. But I was never healed. And I wonder. And some people said, well, you've got some hidden sin. And I thought about it, and evidently the sin was so hidden that I couldn't even find it. But the answers never made any sense. The reality is that we live in an imperfect world and things happen. Now the important thing is to deal with it. The second thing is that Jesus had an answer for the Pharisees who asked the question, did this person sin or did his parents that are responsible for what happened? Jesus doesn't answer most of the questions. As a matter of fact, of all the questions that seem to be asked of him in the New Testament, he only answers 3 directly, and this is one of them. And he said, neither one. No, he's not being punished. That's not the way God works. But what will happen is that God can take this and make something good out of it. You live in a world that is imperfect and sinful, but God still has a purpose in all of that. And now as we suffer, we become a part of that answer. The third thing that I think that is alike in our gospel text and what is happening today is that we don't have to understand everything. We just know that we need to deal with it. We try so hard to explain everything. I did get a sweatshirt on Christmas that has on it, excuse me while I overthink this. And I think that is one of my characteristics. But it is a characteristic of so many people. That when we're dealing with something we don't understand, we think and think and think. Instead of doing what we need to do, placing it in His God's hand, asking for direction, and following his commands to us as far and as well as we can understand them. Here's a fourth thing that is alike in today's gospel text, in today's news world, that we have to accentuate the positive and those things that we know. One of the things the man who had been born blind said to the Pharisees, there's a lot of things I don't know. I don't understand who he is and where he came from, but what I know is that I was once blind and now I see. And what I see is that he is a prophet from God. And I have been made well through him. We know how to make a positive statement. And it is in this problem that we have today that we have the opportunity of being inspirational to others and show them what life is really like. Because so often in our abundance, and when things are going so right for us, we have a tendency to pass by on the other side and let those suffer we don't want to look at. And now we are looking around to the people that we care about and love, and those people that are in the same situation that we are, and understanding, as everybody seems to be saying now, we've got to work together. And maybe that's the miracle. Maybe that's the miracle. And I can guarantee you now that on every day that we watch the news, there will become some light that shows through. That man who can't visit his wife in a nursing home anymore because she has been quarantined. And he goes to the window every morning and sings to her about how he still loves her and that she's the most important thing in her life. We find little deeds that have been done to those that are suffering. We're looking at the schools and saying, rather than what can we do about the tests or how important grades are, and we start asking, what about those kids that come from families that get their chief nutrition from the schools? How are we going to feed them so they get nutrition now? Far more important than tests and grades are staying alive with decent food. Congress is saying we have to work together. For just a couple days, we've forgotten that the only thing we can do is fight. And we say, how can we get this bill passed faster than any other bill that we've had? Because we need to do it together. And so as a church, we look around us and we have to say, how in our community can we do something for those people that need help because this is an unusual situation? And all of a sudden, in the midst of chaos and sickness, miracles are happening. Last night, we had a wedding here. Because of the restrictions, only two besides the bride and groom could be there. It was beautiful. The pews were not filled, but people listened via Facebook and said how beautiful a wedding it was. You don't need to spend $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. You can have beauty and see it more profoundly with two people just getting together and saying, I want to live with you and love you the rest of my life. For just a few days, maybe a few more, we will forget about ourselves and think of a world that suffers and rest in the miracles that come from caring. The message of the gospel lesson is very profound for last week, for today, and I'm sure for next week. Maybe you can find redemption and miracles in this chaos and be thankful for God.